Today, we are reviewing a script for a Spanish-language audio show called OscarAI, which breaks down the recent release, capabilities, and benchmarks of SpaceXAI's Grok 4.6.
Yeah.
And I just want to say right up front that this material is deeply researched. It's highly structured, but we need to jump right into the feedback because we have to fix the structural scaffolding immediately if we want to keep the audience engaged.
Absolutely. So looking at the beginning, the current progression relies too heavily on explicit meta-outlining, which interrupts the natural storytelling momentum of an audio format. The weakness here is that the script pauses right after a very engaging, high-energy hook to literally list out bulleted objectives and goals.
Right, like an actual list?
Yeah, exactly. You have these explicitly labeled sections, like, they call it objectives, where the script announces it will explain the model, analyze its strengths, and give practical criteria.
Yeah.
And then it moves into another literal list of goals for the listener. This instantly breaks the listener's immersion.
It really does.
It makes the whole thing feel like an academic lecture rather than the enjoyable, humorous show they literally just promised in the intro.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're going for here. Let's see how we can strengthen this. Because handing an audience a literal syllabus right after promising them a fun ride, it feels a bit like handing a passenger a detailed topographical map when they just want to look out the window and enjoy the ride.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
But I have to ask, isn't there a risk that without these clear, explicit signposts, a deeply technical script just becomes a rambling mess?
Well,
I mean, if an author has spent weeks researching a complex model like Grok 4.6, aren't they just trying to build trust by showing the audience their roadmap?
They are absolutely trying to build trust, but they are using a textual tool to solve an audio problem.
Ah, okay.
When we write for the eye, structural scaffolding, like bullet points, bolded headers, numbered lists, those are highly comforting.
Right, you can just scan them.
Exactly. They give the reader permission to skim or skip around or visually anchor themselves. But when we write for the ear, that exact same scaffolding becomes a massive roadblock.
Because you can't skim audio.
You can't. In audio, the listener is completely locked into the chronological pace that we set for them. So when we stop the narrative momentum to say, here are my 4 objectives and my 4 goals, the pacing just hits a brick wall.
Yeah.
The listener is suddenly reminded of being in a lecture hall.
So the intention is correct, right? Providing structure. But the execution belongs to a different medium entirely.
Right.
So to integrate this mechanically, I imagine you have to kind of hide the vegetables.
Yes.
Like instead of telling them they are about to learn 3 things, you just pose a mystery that naturally requires those 3 things to solve it.
That is the exact mechanism we need to employ here. So the suggestion is to integrate those stated goals directly into the narrative hook.
Okay.
You allow the content to flow smoothly into the first main point without ever explicitly labeling them as objectives.
Right.
We want to convert administrative compliance into narrative tension.
I love that phrase, administrative compliance into narrative tension. Let's workshop what that actually sounds like for this specific script.
Okay.
Because the original text literally says, Goal 1, explain clearly what Grok 4.6 is. How do we translate that into actual narrative tension?
Well, instead of announcing the goal, you weave the intention directly into a conversational transition.
Okay, like what?
You could say something like, today, we're going to figure out how a model that didn't even grow in size is somehow outperforming the giants, and whether you should actually plug it into your Cursor workspace this week.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but let's break down why that alternative works better on a cognitive level.
Sure.
Because in the original version, the listener hears the word goal, and their brain immediately categorizes it as homework.
Right, they brace themselves for a lecture.
Exactly. But in the revised version you just pitched, the listener hears a paradox, a model that didn't grow in size but is somehow beating the industry giants. The brain naturally leans in to resolve that paradox. They still know exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about the model's size, its performance, and its practical application in Cursor, but they don't feel like they've been assigned reading.
And if we look at the other objectives listed in the script, like analyzing strengths and weaknesses, or comparing it to the 2026 competitive landscape,
offering practical criteria. Hook the listener not by giving them an itinerary, but by creating an intellectual itch they need scratched.
Yeah, because when a podcaster says, first we will do X, then we will do Y, I often find myself mentally checking out until they actually get to the first point.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost like the prologue to a movie being a slow text crawl of everything that's about to happen in the next 2 hours. It ruins the act of discovery. And discovery is the primary engine of a good audio experience.
Exactly.
The listener wants to feel like they are uncovering the truth alongside you, in real time.
If you hand them the entire itinerary up front, there's no spontaneity. The script is treating the listener like a student preparing for an exam on Grok 4.6, rather than a passenger on a thrilling journey to understand a massive shift in artificial intelligence.
Right. So the actionable takeaway for the writer here is to scan their document for any explicit navigational language. Words like objective, goal, firstly, secondly, in this section.
Just cut them.
Highlight them and then delete them entirely. Replace them with questions that demand answers.
Exactly.
Which actually solves our first problem but creates a new one.
How so?
Because if we successfully hook them by ditching the syllabus and relying on a compelling mystery, our next hurdle is keeping them on the hook when the heavy technical data hits.
Ah, yes. The benchmarks.
Right now, the moment they hit the benchmark section, they're going to completely tune out. Let's look closely at the section discussing the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index benchmarks.
Okay.
The author has pulled in some incredibly detailed data here. We've got GDP Valdaa v2, CursorBench v3.2, DeepSui v1.1. It is incredibly thorough.
It is.
But reading a dense alphanumeric soup of acronyms and decimal percentages in a linear audio medium is like asking someone to do mental math while driving. It's like trying to describe a spreadsheet over a walkie-talkie.
That is a perfect analogy.
The listener's brain has no visual anchor, so the numbers just evaporate into the air.
Right, and relying on rapid-fire benchmark statistics risks alienating the audience and contradicting the show's goal of making AI accessible and enjoyable.
Yeah.
The weakness in this section is that the script lists out dense numeric comparisons in a complete vacuum.
Right.
We hear that Grok 4.6 scores 61 points, time GPT-5.6 Sol, trailing Claude Fable 5 Max by 1 point. We hear it hits 15.8% on Harvey Lab, drops to 26% on Terminal Bench.
It's just a wall of numbers.
Yes. In an audio format, raw percentages lack physical context. They are abstract concepts, and abstract concepts are notoriously difficult for a listener to retain, visualize, or even care about unless they are anchored to something physical.
But I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Okay, go for it.
Is there a risk that focusing solely on the narrative and removing all the raw data might overlook the actual user impact? I mean, don't we risk stripping the script of its authority?
Well,
The audience for OscarAI likely consists of developers, prompt engineers, and tech enthusiasts who live and breathe this space. They want the receipts. If we just say, it's pretty good at coding, they are going to feel patronized. How do we keep the credibility without boring them to tears?
That's a great point, but we don't remove the data, we demote it.
Demote it?
Yes. The suggestion is to translate those raw benchmark scores into relatable, real-world analogies or workplace scenarios that demonstrate the tangible impact of those numbers on a user's daily life.
Okay, I see.
The number itself cannot be the protagonist of the sentence. The number must serve as the supporting evidence for human reality.
You mean anchoring the abstract metric to a physical reality? Because the cognitive science of audio confirms this completely.
Right.
Yeah, so when a listener hears a number like 69.9% on CursorBench v3.2, their brain has to first decode the acronym, then remember what that specific benchmark measures,
right.
then process the percentage, and finally compare it to whatever the industry standard is. By the time they've done that 4-step mental gymnastics routine, you're already 3 sentences further into the script talking about Harvey Lab.
And they are completely lost.
Completely left behind. We need a mechanism to bridge that gap.
So let's build a concrete example of how the author could rewrite that specific benchmark section to solve this cognitive overload.
Yes, let's do that.
The script mentions that Grok 4.6 is brilliant in knowledge work and visual projects, but struggles in pure software engineering and terminal environments.
Right, and right now, they prove that by just listing the CursorBench versus Deep Sway and Terminal Bench percentages back to back. How would you frame that as a vivid scenario without losing the technical authority?
Instead of just stating the percentages, frame it as a workplace dynamic.
Okay.
Think of Grok 4.6 as the brilliant designer who can build your app's front end flawlessly in one go. You can slide the data in there by saying, that's why it's hitting a massive 69% on CursorBench.
Ah, nice.
But if you ask that same brilliant designer to dive deep into the back-end terminal server, they are going to freeze up, struggle, and ask for help compared to a back-end veteran like GPT-5.6 Sol.
That's great.
And then you say, that is what that 26% on terminal bench actually looks like in your daily workflow.
That paints an immediate, vibrant picture. The listener instantly understands the practical utility of the tool.
Exactly.
They know they can trust it for the front end, but need to be cautious on the back end. The numbers, the 69% and the 26%, they're still present for the highly technical listeners who want the receipts.
Yep.
But they serve merely as evidence to support the workplace scenario, rather than being the focal point itself.
And we can apply this exact same translation method to the other benchmarks mentioned. Take the Harvey Lab benchmark, where it scores 15.8%.
Right.
The script notes this puts it far ahead in legal reasoning. But what does 15.8% actually mean to someone listening in their car?
I mean, to a listener, 15.8% sounds like a failing grade in high school algebra.
It sounds abysmal.
Yeah. If I hear a 15% success rate on an AI tool, my immediate assumption is that the model is fundamentally broken and hallucinates constantly.
Right.
Unless I have the highly specific context of how punishing that specific legal evaluation is.
So we provide the context by anchoring it to human labor.
Okay.
We say, in the brutal world of the Harvey Lab legal benchmark, where most AI models stumble over basic contract clauses, Grok 4.6 manages a 15.8%. That might sound low, but in AI terms, it means this model can reliably flag the dangerous clauses in your freelance contract, even if you shouldn't let it represent you in front of a judge quite yet.
I love that. You are doing the translation work for the listener.
Yeah.
Instead of demanding they pause the audio to look up the parameters of Harvey Lab on Wikipedia, you give them the freelance contract analogy.
Exactly.
It keeps the promise of the show's introduction alive, taking rigorous, verified data and making it highly enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But translating those numbers doesn't just keep the audience engaged, it actually reveals a much larger narrative pattern.
How so?
Because when you look at how Grok 4.6 is scoring across the board, the numbers point to a massive philosophical takeaway that the author has discovered. Okay, so what I really like about this part is the conclusion that the AI frontier is no longer just about size, but applied intelligence and efficiency.
Oh, absolutely.
The author points out that Grok 4.6 wasn't trained from scratch. SpaceXAI took the existing Grok 4.5 checkpoint, applied longer training, self-generated data, and gave it the ability to self-verify over long-horizon tasks.
It's huge.
They achieve state-of-the-art performance without needing to build a massively larger model. It's an incredible insight. But saving this paradigm-shifting insight for the very end of the script, in the conclusion section, feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, that makes sense. But could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like maybe treating this as the whole reason for the episode?
Yes.
Because the script buries its most compelling and original thematic insight at the very end of the piece, treating a major industry paradigm shift as a mere concluding thought.
Yeah, it's just tucked away at the bottom.
The weakness here is structural prioritization. The fascinating detail that Grok 4.6 is built entirely on the 4.5 checkpoint, using long-horizon agentic trajectories and self-verification, rather than being trained from scratch, is currently treated as just another bullet point in the "what is it" section.
Right.
While the overarching meaning of this, the efficiency over sheer size, is hidden in the final remarks.
I can see the author's logic, though.
You can?
Yeah, it's the classic inverted pyramid or academic structure. You present your data, your methods, your observations, and then you synthesize all of that into a grand conclusion at the end. You build the case brick by brick.
Sure, in a paper.
Right, so isn't there a risk that if we give away the ultimate conclusion in the first 2 minutes, we ruin the suspense of the critique? Like, why would they keep listening if we just hand them the answer immediately?
Well, you are confusing informational suspense with narrative suspense.
Okay, unpack that for me.
In academic writing, you delay the conclusion to prove your methodology. But in narrative audio, if you wait 10 minutes to tell the audience why the topic matters on a macro scale, they've already tuned out.
That's very true.
In a visual medium, the reader can scroll to the bottom if they get bored. In audio, they just hit the 30-second skip button or turn off the show entirely.
Yeah, you just lose them.
Your strongest, most original thought cannot be your conclusion. It must be the engine that drives the entire critique. The suspense shouldn't be, what is the conclusion? The suspense should be, how does this bold thesis actually hold up against reality?
Ah, I see. That completely reframes the listener's relationship to the material.
Exactly.
They become an active judge of your thesis rather than a passive recipient of your data. The data is no longer just a list of facts. It's evidence being submitted to a jury.
Right, so the suggestion is to move this efficiency over size angle to the absolute forefront, using it as the central thesis that ties the whole critique together.
Okay.
Every piece of data, every benchmark, and every practical use case should be framed as evidence supporting or challenging this one central provocative thesis.
Let's workshop a concrete example of how to restructure the opening to make this happen.
Sure.
We want to take those amazing facts, the 5-week turnaround time, the $2 and $6 aggressive pricing model, the fact that it's just the 4.5 checkpoint, and use them as an inciting incident right at the top of the show.
Yes, so you could frame the entire analysis around a single compelling question introduced in the first minute.
How would that sound?
You start the show and say, SpaceXAI just proved you don't need to spend billions to train a new base model from scratch to tie with GPT 5.6 Sol. You just need to teach your old model how to double-check its own work.
Oh, that's strong.
And then you say, they did it in just 5 weeks, and they are charging a fraction of the price. Today, we are going to tear apart Grok 4.6 to figure out exactly how they pulled this off and what it means for the future of AI.
Wow. That changes the entire temperature of the script.
Doesn't it?
Now the listener isn't just listening to a product review, they are listening to an industry thriller.
Exactly.
And it fundamentally changes how the listener receives all the benchmark data we discussed in the second point.
Right, it all connects.
Because when we mention that it scores 61 points on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, it's no longer just a random statistic floating in space. It becomes a critical piece of evidence proving our central thesis, that efficiency and self-verification can equal the raw power of a massive model.
Yes, it weaves everything together into a single, cohesive through line.
Yeah.
When you bring up the fact that it excels in long-horizon agentic tasks, like the 1577 score on AA Briefcase, it directly supports the idea that the model is succeeding because it was specifically trained to stay with a problem and verify its own work.
Rather than just brute forcing an answer through massive parameter counts.
Exactly. The structure now works for the content rather than against it.
And when you get to the limitations, it actually makes the script stronger.
How so?
Because if your thesis is efficiency is beating size, highlighting where Grok 4.6 struggles, like deep coding and terminal environments, adds necessary nuance.
Ah, right.
It shows that while self-verification is an incredible tool, it still has boundaries. It can't entirely replace the deep structural understanding that comes with a massive, ground-up training run for specific coding environments.
Right, and it makes the host sound incredibly objective, balanced, and deeply analytical.
Yeah, you don't sound like a fanboy.
Exactly. By shifting that core thematic insight to the front, we aren't changing the author's facts or their research. We are simply organizing their existing brilliance in a way that maximizes its impact on the human ear.
We are ensuring that the most valuable insight they have to offer is the lens through which the entire audio experience is viewed.
But you might be wondering, if we move the thesis to the beginning, what happens to the end of the script?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. The author originally had this great section on business challenges at the end. Does that just get cut?
Not at all. If the thesis is at the beginning, the ending shifts from a simple summary into a forward-looking provocation.
Oh, I like that.
The author smartly points out the industry's dependence on post-training and asks how far you can really squeeze a single base model.
Right.
If you've set up the efficiency versus size thesis at the beginning, this question lands with so much more weight at the end. The listener is fully equipped to understand the gravity of that question because you spent the last 15 minutes teaching them the underlying mechanics of it.
So the ending becomes a cliffhanger for the entire industry.
Precisely.
It takes the material from being highly informative to being genuinely unmissable.
Yeah.
Let's quickly synthesize the core actionable takeaways for the author based on what we've unpacked today.
Sounds good.
First, dissolve the explicit objectives and goals lists into conversational, dramatic hooks to maintain narrative momentum. You don't want to hand the passenger a topographical map when they just want to look out the window. Substitute administrative compliance with narrative tension.
Absolutely.
Second, convert the dry benchmark data into relatable real-world scenarios. Anchor the abstract metrics to a physical reality. Translate the CursorBench numbers into the brilliant front-end designer who panics in the back-end terminal.
Right, give them that visual.
And third, elevate that incredible insight about efficiency over model size from a concluding afterthought to the central driving thesis of the entire script. Use it as the engine that powers every other point, creating narrative suspense from the very first minute.
The foundational research and the passion in this material are exceptional. It just requires that shift in structural scaffolding to truly sing in an audio format.
We highly encourage the author to implement these structural and thematic changes, to take this incredibly detailed blueprint and build that living structure. Once you've reworked the narrative flow, please submit the revised material back in for another round of feedback. We would love to see how it evolves.